Hello and greetings, Internet, and welcome to another special episode of My Cool Friends. I am so happy and I am so excited to have all of you guys here with me tonight. We here, My Cool Friends, interview great, fantastic entrepreneurs who are impacting lives around them and creating wealth in the places that truly matter. And be sure to catch new episodes live every Friday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at the Platinum Mastermind with Ben Ebig. Today, our guest, I met this gentleman through the 2CCX coaching program with ClickFunnels, and he has become a personal best friend of mine, as all of my guests are. And not only that, he does something that is truly fantastic. He helps fitness coaches and personal trainers get into this fantastic online space that we are all in. And I have had some sit-down conversations with this man, and I must say he is a wizard when it comes to writing copy. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome our very special guest, Mr. Marty White.
Hey, what's up?
Hello, Mr. Marty White. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself for those not familiar with you joining us today?
Absolutely. It depends on where you start the story. I was thinking about this earlier. I was like, where am I going to start this story?
Start with your backstory.
Start with the high drama part of this, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was thinking about it today. I'm like, dang, almost all my stories start with a catastrophic knee injury. It's just sort of been, it's sort of been my thing. And I'm just, for the record, going to say that I don't like that, but I'm going to start there anyway. It doesn't really matter what I like. But it all started with a catastrophic knee injury. I was a personal trainer, and I was an amateur MMA fighter. And, I had fought tooth and nail to get there. I had come from being a school teacher and a band director. And whenever I was over there, I was just completely dissatisfied with my life. I had, made compromise after compromise with what I was going to do, what I was going to be, and pretty much had betrayed myself. And as a result of that, I gained 100 pounds, and it was one of the darkest time periods of my life. But fast forward just a little bit through that story, I lost that 100 pounds in 11 months. And then my new passion was helping people with their health. And I was, I was driving about an hour and a half to 2 hours one way to train at this gym up in North Mississippi, and fell in love with it there. And so that's how I got started training in the MMA and doing that. But before I knew it, I was helping people out, both fighters and just people who were coming to the gym, lose weight, get in shape, feel great, get own weight for competition, things of that nature. And so after my second fight, I blew out my ACL in my knee. And so it had been all fun and games there, because I had gone from having a steady paycheck. It wasn't a lot at all. But as a school teacher, I had completely left that. That's what I went to school for. And I had pretty much just completely burned that bridge. And I knew I was never going back to that. And whenever I first got started personal training, of course, I went through that time frame where I was doing a lot of working for free, a lot of proving myself, a lot of getting results for people at little to nothing, which was all fine and dandy until this point. All of a sudden, I realized that I really had no idea how to sell to anybody. I had no idea how to get the right person's attention. And as a result of that, I was forced to take on clients that otherwise I would not have worked with. They just did not fit the person that I wanted to work with, and they did not fit the person that I could help the most. So I was, and for those of you who don't know, whenever you have total ACL reconstruction, that's a full body hard reset. I mean, that's as good as unplugging the modem and plugging it back in and waiting for things to be normal again. But it doesn't take.
Let me ask you, what was your you've to take a footnote here in this story, your emotional state at this point must have been just out of this world. Like you don't have a promising income. You've as you've described, like a lot of your stories start with you blowing out your leg. You've had these catastrophic knee injuries, so you've had both physical, you could say you've had both physical trauma with your body, and you've had both mental trauma, because all of a sudden your world has been rocked because now you don't have a steady income anymore.
Big time.
Yeah. So how did you tell us, how did you get through this? How did you get through this challenge?
Well, there's a lot to that, and still to this day it can be difficult to talk about, because you're absolutely right. If you talk just the physical aspect of it, just going from somebody who, you're an MMA fighter, you're supposed to be indestructible, and all of a sudden you find out that you can break, and then what that does to you. So that was one part of it, and that in itself is its own story. But more to what you're talking to, more to the point that you're talking to, I'm sitting there thinking, so at this time, this is 2016, whenever all this is going down, and I'm sitting there on the couch thinking to myself, you idiot. It's like you threw away a sure thing to come do this. Now look at you. It's like you wanted to play martial artist, you wanted to play tough guy, and look at what that got you. It's like now you're broke, and you have all these medical bills to pay. While you've been playing around living your dream, your wife's been at a 9-to-5 job that she hated, and I could see day by day that it was killing her to do that. Meanwhile, I'm just trying to get back to where I can walk again, and as I'm doing this, I am frantic would be the word. I'm like, oh God, I have to figure out how to make money now. I have to figure out how I'm going to not only make a living, but get financially free to where if something like this happened again, that I would have another source of income that didn't involve my physical performance, because it's like as a personal trainer, it was easy to get clients whenever I was healthy and in the gym all the time and shooting the breeze and doing that sort of thing, and people could see what I could do and how I was helping others, and then they would hear my story about it. This guy lost 100 pounds and became a cage fighter, and people are like, whoa, this guy must know what he's talking about. Like that was easy. But as soon as I went down, that stopped dead in its tracks. People saw me, and there's just a subconscious thing that happens with people. When you see somebody that's sick or hurt, people tend to be like, well, good luck. They see kind of like
we want to help, but there's nothing that we can physically do.
Right. And with an injury like that, your posture begins to deteriorate, and as a result, your body language is giving off that I'm in survival mode. I'm in deep trouble. And it took me back to whenever I was 100 pounds overweight and had posture problems for different problems, because I was carrying a big old gut around. It's like I noticed that people stopped listening to what I was actually saying. I could tell, like, whenever I talked to people, they'd be like, yeah, right, you don't know what you're talking about. And it was this thing where my entire operating system had been pulled out from underneath me. The way I thought the world worked, the way I thought the person I thought I should be was gone. So I was a total train wreck. So what I ended up doing, on top of just, at first I had in my head that I was going to make the fastest comeback ever, that I was superhuman. I was still in that MMA fighter kind of mindset. It's like, I'm too tough. You can't break me, blah, 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 blah.
How would you describe that, like, MMA fighter mindset? Because it's interesting as you're sitting here talking about this. I often think about, like, when I talk about people and their origin story, a lot of times, like, it's a very much like, people find out what they're truly capable of when their back is against the wall. That's when, like, our true superpowers, as we call them, turn out. And so what was this MMA fighter mindset like that you're describing?
Well, it was something that I started building as I was losing my weight. I remember, and I'll just go ahead and admit it. Like, I was one of those dudes who was drinking Cokes and beer and alcohol and eating nacho cheese, talking about how I could do a better job than those fighters in the cage would. Like, I was that guy. And one night I was watching The Ultimate Fighter, and it was I don't know if you know who Chael Sonnen is, but it was the season with Chael Sonnen and John Jones, and he made this really big inspirational speech right there, and I just had this realization. I was like, these dudes are not only are they in peak physical conditioning, but they also have to be in peak mental conditioning, because this guy who was competing on the show, I mean, just chiseled body, looked superhuman, but he had doubt, he had fear about his upcoming fight that night on the show. And that was like my breaking point. That was where I was like, you know what? These guys can, literally bear it all on the line. They're gambling with their health in one of the highest stakes games that you can play outside of, full out, all on real warfare, or a street fight.
Mm-hmm.
And so from that day, I mean, just something snapped. I remember, like, this is it. That's the day. So I started making a game out of my workout. Was where it all started. I was like, I'm going to beat my high score every single time that I work out. I'm going to do, in 30 seconds, I'm going to do 9 reps today instead of 8 like last time. And I just kept going. I kept building that up. And the more I did that, the more I was like, I can do one more. 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 And I kept proving myself right, and I kept improving. So eventually I got to this point to where, especially once actual training started, like I had gotten in shape enough to where it's like, okay, now I'm going to a gym and I'm finding people to train with who are also fighting, and we're got the whole iron sharpens iron thing going on. So there was just no quit. There was no give up. Even when, like, pretty good pain was involved. Like, I could tell a whole bunch of stories about just getting, like, what I would consider to be, most people would probably be like, oh my God, why did you keep training whenever you felt your rib crack? And I was like, well, because that's what MMA fighters do. It's like, it wasn't that big of a deal. So I kept pushing it. And then I found out that I could do the same thing with pain in a way. Like, I could take that pain, and it's like, I can handle more pain. I can handle more pain. I can handle more pain. And then, I kept that mindset up, and that eventually led to the injury that got me good. So it was a good thing and a bad thing. It was a trade-off. I learned to fuel myself by the pain instead of fueling myself with desire, you could say, would be the difference.
Yeah. What was a big takeaway from this, you describe fueling yourself by pain rather than desire. And there's so much that you've shared through this journey of like losing weight to then going to like almost a different realm of recovery with your physical injuries. I'm curious to know, like, what was a great epiphany that you had from this journey that is now serving you in your business?
So I would say on that is like the big takeaway is stuff breaks, get used to it. It would be would be the takeaway from it, because like obviously rebuilding my body was a challenge, but rebuilding my mindset after that is something that took much longer. It took my knee healed within 9 months to a year, but my fear of doing it again is still with me to this day. It's like you just never really know. It's like this step could be the one where it snaps. Is a lingering thought, but you go on anyway. It's like you take that next step anyway. So the way that's helped in business and this whole thing is that's how I really view copywriting anyway, because you can spend all of this time writing the quote unquote perfect sales letter or the perfect script for a video, the perfect webinar, the perfect whatever. And then you spend months getting it right, and then you do it, and then it doesn't work. Like, it's broken. And then not only that, you might not even know where it's broken for a while. And that sort of takes me back again to that recovery process with the knee. Is there were a lot of times during that to where you, in order to actually heal the knee, it was a lot about taking tension off the knee. So if you kind of can go down this imaginary track with me for a second.
I'm seeing the parallels here. Go down the track for me.
So your knee is in between your hip and your foot, right? Like it resides somewhere in between there. And the tightness of your hips, like the more tight your hips are, the more pressure is put on the knee. So I was in this place to where I had been sitting down for a long, long time, during that recovery process. And I had, after 6 weeks, you're able to take the brace off and you're able to start trying to learn how to walk again without the brace. And I had strengthened it up to a certain point, and I kept doing that. And that MMA fighter mindset kept in. It was like, well, I'm going to keep enduring this pain that I'm feeling. I'm going to keep doing these exercises and get stronger. So I did that, and it worked for about 6 months. But then about 6 months in that recovery process, I had this realization. It's like, if you keep doing this, you're going to tear your knee up again. Like, I just felt all sorts of pressure on my knee. And I figured out that I was going to have to address it a little bit differently. So I started focusing a whole lot on stretching, I started stretching my hips, and the more my hips became loose, a little bit of pressure would get taken off of the knee. And then I would notice there would be a muscle imbalance somewhere else in my body that had happened as a result of repetitive motion with bad body mechanics. So I would spend some time stretching and undoing that part. And little by little, I would fix other areas around that were around the knee. And then all of a sudden, my knee finally is like click, click, locked into place. And then the muscles got stronger in the right way. So it was a very indirect approach, and that was the biggest exercise of, okay, take your mind off of the obviously glaring apparent pain that you're feeling constantly, and put your mind on what to do to fix the problem. Put your mind on the solution instead of the problem. And so that is the next copywriting parallel, is you might be meeting people where that pain is, and you're like, you have this pain, now here is the solution. Just taking their mindset of like, yes, I do have this pain, and then this is what you can do about it, is like that next transition.
That's fascinating. And I was talking with someone recently that like it's like this parallel that you're drawing to between like this real world life of like you recovering from this injury and this fear that you had, like, oh, it didn't work once. I fell down and I broke something. And so now I have this phobia of getting back up again on my feet. I'm not sure if I have the physical strength. Like it's so fascinating how much we could relate to like all facets of our life with that, because we've all failed at something before. And like in terms of me, like for video, like I've seen like both myself and so many people like put like our souls into like what we create, and then like of course like we take it personally when it's out there in the world for like everyone to see, like especially with our online businesses. Our baby is out in the world. So I'm curious to know, like, when you have both for my own curiosity and for our listeners right now, how did you overcome this when you're on a theoretical ledge and you want to jump, but there's a fear holding you back, and this fear is like a past life experience? How do you push yourself to jump?
You have to get as good at selling yourself on what you ultimately want to happen as you are as selling yourself on your excuses.
Ooh.
So, back to the injury. I told you all my stories start with a catastrophic knee injury, but back to this. I mean, it's like you get this, and like this is like the sales process, but you're using the sales process for the pain, the problem, the excuse. You're like, my knee hurts. It's broken. My ACL is torn. It's like, problem. And it's like, all right, what does that do? Well, it hurts. It's like I'm stepping on black ice. It's like I constantly have this fear that I'm going to face plant, which could hurt me more. At minimum, it's going to be embarrassing. And then I'm going to have to admit that something's wrong and I actually need help. And then it's like, okay, so that's what that injury does. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that I'm not as tough as I thought I was. That means that I need somebody to fix me. That means that I'm broken, possibly beyond repair. So in doing so, in that mindset, you have sold yourself on why you can't,
Ooh.
So instead, it's like, okay, well, what happens if you don't do something about it? And that's the part that always gets me. Like certain people, like with that first part that I told you, that's enough for most people. But for me and my stubborn self, the thing that always gets me is what happens if you don't fix this? So I'm like, well, that means that 100-pound weight loss was for nothing. That means that people are always going to look at you like, man, he could have been something, but he gave up on himself. And so it's like, I can't possibly let that happen. So now, in order to move on from the excuse, you have to be like, okay, well, now what do you want? Yes, it's true that your body doesn't work the way it used to. anymore. It doesn't work the way you think it should. Now, what do you want? Well, I want to get back up on my feet and start moving again. Well, why is that? Because I want to be able to train again because I love training martial arts. I want to get back to helping and serving people and training them. I want to feel passionate and alive about doing so again. And I want to be an inspiration for people, to show that, yeah, you can come back from this, even after you come back from that and come back from that, and you can just keep on going. And then you're like, okay, well, now what do you get to do? Not what do you have to do, but what do you get to do is like, well, I get to train my body intentionally, intelligently. I get to do X, Y, and Z. And then you go from that to, and what does that mean? And you really get deep into the meaning of like, now that you are up back on your feet, training people, training yourself, feeling alive again, what does that mean that you're able to do? And for me personally, it was that means that I can attain my ultimate goal of being able to do whatever I want to do in my life, as far as, across health, wealth, and relationships, because I am the best version of myself possible. And then again, it's like, in case that wasn't enough, what happens if you don't do all of what you just said? It's like, well, I'm sitting here in a chair hating my life again, and I go back to how I was as a band director. And so using the sales process on what you want instead of using the sales process on the problem, which most people would call excuses, that's how you really get over it and really change things.
That's fast. Like, I've never heard it phrased quite like that. Like, at some point you sold yourself on the negative side of things. So it's all about convincing and persuading, selling yourself on the positive side of things. How convincing, in a very real way, convincing yourself to get up off your feet, because we are, in a very real way, we're the masters of our own destiny. And so it's all about picking that back up. And so I'd like to then ask you, Marty, so you have become the master of your own destiny. You have picked yourself up off your feet. Marty, what are you doing to nowadays in 2020? How are you serving the people that you wish to serve?
Well, I am helping fitness coaches, personal trainers, health and wellness coaches, and that's mostly what I would call my people out if I had to. That's mostly who's coming to me, but I'm helping them be able to articulate and how they can help people and what they're selling in a way that's palatable to the people that they can help. Because oftentimes, and I was guilty of this too, that their knowledge is what's holding them back. They like to use big, scary words. They like to try to impress their potential clients by how much they know, and that's really, they're shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
And so earlier, whenever I was describing my knee problems, I was using normal human English language to describe it, but personal trainers do this thing where it's like, yeah, the pain is proximal to the knee joint and distal from the lumbopelvic hip flexor complex, and we're going to use
why do we talk in big words to make ourselves sound smarter?
And we're going to measure your VO2 mats based on this calculation and blah blah blah. It's like, whoa. It's like, please stop. So I mean, and that's just what they do. And I had this realization because among the many things that I did to get back into shape was I started teaching fitness kickboxing. And so I realized that like all the people that I work with, they have dream clients, right? And it's all about talking to this one dream client, this one person. And so I realized that if you are going to sell a roundhouse kick to an MMA fighter versus selling a roundhouse kick to a 50, 60, 70-year-old lady who wanted just to get in shape, you would have to sell it a little differently. MMA fighters obviously is like you want to get good at a roundhouse kick because you want to like stop your opponent in their tracks. You want to hurt their leg and make it and immobilize them to where you can out footwork them and knock them out. Well, old ladies really don't want to do that. So, I mean, that's not on the top of their mind. Usually I did have this, and I loved it to death. I did have this 70-year-old lady who was very mean and talked about beating up short, fat men at Tractor Supply on a regular basis. So I sort of worried about her a little bit, but in a good way. But anyway, we would be doing real kickboxing techniques, but I would be saying, okay, you want to get this roundhouse kick down because you want to gain flexibility in your hips, and that means that you're going to be able to strengthen your legs, and your legs are going to look good. You're going to flatten your tummy. You're going to round out your shoulders like you want to round them out, et cetera, et cetera. So I really help my fitness professionals, my health and wellness coaches find those reasons that their dream customers would want their product. And I get them to talk about that instead of talk about how they're going to make that happen.
Yeah, it's fascinating because like I've come to this like recent realization myself that's like whenever we're buying something, we're not interested in logic. We buy things because of emotional reasons. But what that also boils down to is that it boils down to a self-interest, as in like, oh man, how does this thing that I'm buying benefit me? And much like your example, it's like these are two individual, like different people, and like whatever you're selling might have like a world of like different benefits, but all it boils down to is just that one question, like how does this benefit me? And a lot of times like that individual person like has different goals in mind for them, like wherever they're going. So a lot of times if you can like tie that together with like that person's individual goals, that just means that then there is no objections. Like you are part of their journey. You're part of their puzzle piece.
Right. I mean, you're always ultimately you're selling them on a result which is tied to a benefit, and all benefits are actions. That was a big realization for me, and something I didn't understand for a while. Whenever you're talking about benefits always start with an action. It makes something, it saves something, it gives you something, it helps you avoid something, whereas so many of us get caught up in features because exactly what you said, like it's ours, it's our baby. So we want to talk about all the cool bells and whistles that are a part of it in the form of features. And that's exactly how you don't sell something.
Absolutely. And I've made that mistake plenty of times myself. It's like, oh, it does this. Like, I mean, perfect example, my phone. It's like, it does tens of thousands of different things, but I mean, I buy it for one purpose, which is my business. I use it for work, even though there's like half a dozen different things that the phone does, of which I never use it for.
Yeah. Is it all right if I tell a story about you on here?
You may.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure which story we're going to be going into, so be warned, listener. We are about to open up a mystery box.
It's nothing bad, I assure you. But I remember, Ben and I connected initially because we both are gamers, and so we were talking about that, and Ben came to me once upon a time asking me some questions about how would you sell this whole bot building thing that he was doing at the time.
Oh, that was a while ago.
This was a long time ago. I mean, this is ancient history at this point. But I was like, all right, give me what you got. And so Ben started talking, and he was telling me like all these ins and outs of bot buildings. And as he's describing this, like my stomach is starting to like knot up and turn up and twist and do all this stuff inside. And then finally I couldn't take it anymore. I'm like, all right. I don't remember if I said this out loud exactly. I'm normally pretty nice about things, but I might have been pretty direct on this one. I was like, Ben, you're making me not want to do bots ever. I was like, this is making me sick a little bit thinking about having to implement bots now. And so I ended up saying that, it's like, and we ended up talking through stuff. I'm like, all right, Ben, so once you put all that stuff you just said in, what does that do? He's like, well, it automatically gets you traffic. I'm like, there you go. It's like, that's what you talk about, because like me as the person who's interested in implementing bots, like I'm just the type of person that doesn't have any interest in going out and chasing people down. I don't have interest in manually sitting there messaging people back and forth. It's like I want something that automatically responds to people and sends them to the right offer. And then it was like, ding, 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 ding.
I remember this conversation. I remember this epiphany. And yes, you were the one who gave it to me. And like, that this is especially useful for like if you're in the programming space. This is like niching down is probably the best thing that you can do. Because a lot, like I've seen recently, like programming is one of the things that's like very, very underpaid because there's so many people doing it, and yet it's a very, very hard thing to do. I don't mind saying, but yet if you reframe what you're doing into like, oh yeah, I help people connect like websites that are like complete competitors of each other with utilizing code, like that's like that's magical. That's like that you're a godsend then, and like people are happy to hire you and talk to you.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's a cool Ben story. But I think the coolest Ben story that I have is the time I lost a bet to Ben.
This had to do with Mortal Kombat, didn't it?
It did. I can't believe it. Like I have a jacket on right now. I showed you. I actually have the Mortal Kombat emblem tattooed on my bicep. This is and I lost a bet about Mortal Kombat. It was about Mortal Kombat versus DC, and for whatever reason, I was remembering it as a 2D fighting game as opposed to a 3D fighting game.
Yes.
And Ben was like, I promise it's 3D. I'm like, no, it's not. And so
were we at a Mastermind when we had
we were at the Unlock the Secrets Mastermind in Denver.
And we were in I think we were in a hot tub at the time. I was like, let me get my phone.
We were, and Ben said, if I'm wrong, I'll build you a bot. I'm like, fine. Well, if I'm wrong, I'll write you a soap opera email sequence. So this guy wrote that guy a soap opera sequence. And so, I tell that story because it was the start of something beautiful. At that point, I had never written a soap opera sequence for anybody other than myself before.
I didn't know that.
So I was not heartbroken that I had lost it, because I was like, you know what, this is going to help me get over that fear of writing for somebody else. So as soon as I wrote that soap opera sequence for Ben, I was like, you know what, I can do this. So to further answer the earlier question of like, what am I doing? I'm writing email sequences for my fitness professionals and health and wellness coaches. I'm writing sales letters. I'm helping them out with headlines. I'm helping them pull the right story elements out. I'm, and the customers at the highest level are, pretty much like, write my copy for me. Like, tell me what words to say. And that's what I'm doing.
I don't mind saying, like, writing is not my shtick. And so, and I think there's a lot of people out there that would agree, like, hey, like writing is just not our shtick. Like, I'll get on video like this and talk all day about philosophy and whatever you want. I'll talk about the beginning of time and the end of time as long all day, but I do not want to write, which is weird because like my first introduction to the internet was a video game blog. So like when someone like you comes in and says like, hey, like I'll write your emails. I'll come in, like, be the master of emails. Like, that is just a godsend to so many people. And I'm like, you are doing a lot of like great work for the health professionals that you are serving. Marty, I have one question. What's this thing that's scrolling at the bottom of the screen? This like magical link. What is this? Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, this is gearedupinsider.com. You can also go to just gearedupinsider.com, or you can go to gearedupinsider.com/GIU-services, and you can see where you can book a call, book your free discovery call to talk with me about how I can help you get your copy written, whether that be emails, sales pages, maybe even a book. I just recently got done ghost writing a book for somebody, and I was having a conversation the other day with somebody who's like, man, it's like, I know how awesome a book could be for, people to indoctrinate them and get them into my world, but I'm just so overtaken by the scope of writing a book. And it's like, well, can help you out, and we got it done within a week or two. I forget the exact time frame, but it was pretty quick.
That's fascinating. Congratulations, man.
Well, thank you. One more little nerd out thing that I have to do, just because I hadn't mentioned it.
Keep nerding out. You have my permission.
Okay, all right. Permission to nerd out granted. Just all right. So during the time that I was hurt, that's whenever I got the bright idea that I was going to be a Twitch streamer. So I fell in love with this game called Rainbow Six Siege back whenever it first came out in 2015. And I've been playing it ever since. Like, I am head over heels in love with that game, is the best way I know how to describe it. And I also view that game and copywriting to be like the same game. Like, it's all, as weird as that sounds, it's all about, finding the right customer, if you will, and figuring out what angle you should come at them at with the right answer. If you boil it down to the right things.
I get what you're saying.
And you're the defenders are literally building a funnel with their reinforcements and the way they're manipulating the walls so that when the attack comes in, they funnel into their little death traps. And then the attackers use their gadgets and utility to create their own choke point and flip that funnel on its head and make a funnel that's more conducive to their weapons. So it's always something that I've used as a parallel in a teaching tool just as much as I do like my ACL injury and stuff like that when I'm talking to the right audience, of course. And I have been working on an unofficial Rainbow Six Siege strategy guide that I've been writing, and it's very, very close to completion. It's been just a passion, just for fun project, but that's also coming soon. So I just wanted to place that one out there too.
That's awesome. So your writing goes even beyond your professional life.
Yeah, I would like to say on that, I like to help my customers come up with fun and innovative ways to reach their clients too, because that's just the way I am. It's like it was one of those things, one of those moments in my life where I was like, you know what, I'm not going to play a victim, even though I'm sitting here and I know I'm sitting here and I can't move, I can't train people. I'm going to try something. So I was like, I'm going to play video games and turn on a camera. So that's how that started. That's how that, and that's, I would say that's why, I guess, but that's why I know I'm so emotionally attached to Rainbow Six Siege. It was because it was there during a very trying time of my life. So I've taken that, and I know that not all of my, probably probably none of my customers even know what that is, but maybe some of them do, but
hey, I know what it is.
even at that, it is, I'll tell you what it is. It's a Trojan horse for affiliate marketing, because what I'm doing, like the way I'm going to make this book pay off, is I have links to my funnels at the end of that book for gaming content creators who might need help with their messaging. I have affiliate links in there and other offers of friends. So it's yet again another strategy that a fitness professional could use as an additional source of income that doesn't directly involve, their physical capabilities. Because I mean, that's it definitely keeps this guy up at night thinking about what happens if you get hurt and you can't train people anymore. It's like, that one keeps me up at night sometimes.
Right. So much, like, especially like with this past year, has shown us, like, not like you're talking about like physical injuries as an example, but just this past year has shown us that like your job is not as secure as you thought it was.
Not.
So like everything that we talk about, that like, copywriting, whatever your like hidden skill is, like now's the time to utilize that and tap into it, because these resources that we once thought were like bountiful, like, are not as like infinite as we once thought.
Right. And just in case it hasn't sunk in all the way yet, if your copywriting sucks, then you run the risk of burning out on whatever your passion is, because, rewind back to whenever I was training people I didn't want to train because I had to. Like, that made me, for the longest time, I was like, I don't want to train people anymore. Like, this sucks. And it was a lie that I was telling myself at the time to make myself feel better in some way. But the same thing happened with, streaming Rainbow Six Siege too. I mean, you would think that, it's like, you get to play video games for a living. How in the world do you get burnt out on playing video games for a living? It's like, well, whenever it turns into a have to, and you're not getting the results that you're looking for because your messaging's off, you run the risk of getting burnt out, because it's like you pour your heart and soul into something, anything, and you're not getting a return. And copywriting is the answer to that. if you are able to articulate what you can do or what your product can do for somebody, and you're able to articulate what it means for them individually, like we talked about earlier, that's the real secret sauce. You're going to be able to live the lifestyle that you want. If you're not able to do that, you're going to get burnout, you're going to get broke, you're going to quit. So that's why your copy needs to be on point. And if you're somebody who's like, dang, I really like, that's what I want, I really need to do that, but I don't think I'm going to be able to do that by myself, then I'm your guy.
Absolutely. Like, the magic of outsourcing is just like, it's just a weight off your shoulders. Marty White, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us on this welcome. Friday evening.
I've had a great time. I do have to say, like, I might just be getting old. I might be turning into a boomer, but it's about 30 minutes past my bedtime. But I've had a great time. I did have my coffee mug that says some days it's hard to get your bass in gear. So,
Marty, thank you so much for joining us. And to you, the viewers who have joined us live, and to all of you who have joined us on the replay, thank you so much for joining us. We will be back next week with another special guest. Be sure to tune into our post to see who that's going to be. Until then, I hope you all have a very safe and a very happy weekend.
Bye, y'all.